My Property app tutorial, how to analyze a student accommodation deal in 30 minutes or less. Let's get started. Now, I thought the best way to describe the process that I would follow when analyzing a student deal using the app was to use a live deal. So this is a property that I'm currently looking at. It's an 11-bed student accommodation in Brixton, Johannesburg. Brixton is a very common student area, so is Hurst Hill, Vredendorp, anything that's within really a kilometer or 1.5 kilometers away from the university is what you want to be targeting, because that's the criteria that NSFAS looks for, is within 1.5 kilometers. So when looking at this deal, what struck me first of all was the description by the estate agent. So it's a must-view student accommodation close to UJ. And if you look there, the last line, it says the income per month on this property is 39,600. And also just above it, a very important point is the lease is for 12 months. Now, usually when you're looking at student accommodation, you need to budget a lease for 10 months because the property is very rarely going to be full for a full 12-month period. The reason being is that students don't necessarily rent November and December when the holidays start, and they tend to go home to their families or on holiday and they don't want to rent. So usually you need to budget a 2-month vacancy period, but with this deal, currently the leases are in place for 12 months, which is a very good sign. On the bottom right, you'll see the asking price. So it's asking 2.8 million. Immediately, this looks like an attractive deal because your income of nearly 40,000 Rand should quite easily be able to cover your bond and still have some money left over. And that's the location. So it's sort of, as you can see, the University of Johannesburg athletics track. It's within about 0.8 kilometers of the university. So it's in an ideal positioning. So from a high level view, this deal does seem to make a little bit of sense. Now, before we get started in the analysis of the deal, I just want to put in context where the analysis sits in comparison to your property journey. Before starting with analyzing deals, you first need to start with the S of SAP, which is your strategy selection. I have hosted a webinar specifically focused on SAP, being strategy area property. If you do want to find out more about that, please go to members.sapropertynetwork.com. So the S is for strategy selection. That's the first point you need to focus on when starting your property journey. From there, you do area analysis, so finding an area that fits your strategy. And then once you've got your area, you need to analyze deals. So for instance, the strategy that I've selected with this deal is student accommodation. The areas that make sense is any area that has proximity to the university of 1.5 kilometers. So I've chosen Brixton and Vredendorp as my two areas. So we're analyzing deals in those two areas. Okay, so that's where it would start. Your strategy selection really, as just a quick summary for those of you who haven't gone through the previous webinar, is that your strategies are either active strategies or passive strategies. Active strategies are things like flipping, buy, renovate, and sell, and sourcing. Anywhere where you're doing a capital transaction where you're going to make a profit from one deal. So you'll make 50,000 Rand once off buying low and selling for profit. That's known as an active or a flipping strategy. Passive is anything that has got a recurring income basis. So be it a buy to rent, putting one tenant into a property, or a multi-let, multiple tenants into one property. Right, so selecting your strategy within either passive or active, then you do your area analysis. My recommendation is to use TPN for any rental information. On the left, you'll see a slide taken from a TPN report that tells you which areas are high risk from a default point. So the red areas are giving you the indication that the tenants are going to default. They're not going to pay their rent on time. Orange and yellow are also relatively risky areas, but your greens are good. And then on the right, you'll see a sort of a high level area analysis of which areas are the best to invest in based on capital appreciation being the blue bar, the green bar being rental information or rental yield, and the red being risk of default. And then if you want to do area analysis for an active strategy or for flipping, I recommend using a tool called Lightstone. Lightstone tells you on the bottom left there, that picture tells you whether the area is expecting to appreciate in value. As you can see, the light blue graph is going up steadily over the last 7 years. So that indicates that there's a capital appreciation for that specific type of property. And on the right, if you've used Lightstone before, you can get comparable analysis to know what the properties in the neighboring part of that property, what they sold for, and you can use that to get a accurate resale value. So again, this webinar is not about giving you the strategies or the areas. We've done another webinar for that. I just wanted to put in context where deal analysis fits into strategy area property. So that's where we get into the deal analysis, which is the whole point of our webinar today. And there are a couple of steps that we need to take, both when looking at a deal and using the My Property app. So first of all, the comparative analysis. Now, this is the starting point for when analyzing a deal. Comparative analysis means you need to look at properties in the area of similar shape, size, feature, and location and determine, is this a fair asking price? So if you're looking at, for example, this deal of 2.8 million, what are other properties in the area of also 11 beds selling for? So you can get an idea of, is this a fair asking price or not? Another thing that you need to do in the comparative analysis is you need to look at what the rent is that you could achieve in that area. So those are the 2 points you do there. Once you've got your area analysis, or you know what the comparable properties are going for in that area, your next step is to do buying costs. Now, your buying costs really fit into 2 major categories. It's your transfer fees, so the cost of transferring a property from the seller's name into your name, and then your bond registration costs. Right, then you'll need to look at what are your renovations going to cost. So we'll look at that. Some other costs that sometimes investors forget about are things like evictions or rezoning or subdivision. Those costs that aren't always very common in every transaction, they tend to be very common in student accommodation because you have to get the right zoning to have multiple tenants using the property. Right, once you've figured out your other costs, you can then determine your financing costs either through the bank or through the private investor. With all that information from step 1 being your comparative analysis, knowing what the rent is for the deal, also what all your costs are and expenses, you can determine what your cash flow is, which will also tell you what your return on investment is, and then generating an investor proposal to raise the financing. So those are the steps you would take when analyzing a deal. Now, what I thought would be useful is let's demo the app using this deal that I'm currently looking at as a test case. So let's open up the app. Okay. So I'm just going to start by logging in to the app. Okay. So this is phase 2, which will be live in a couple of days. Phase 1 is very similar. All we've done really is we've made it just look a little bit fancier, a little bit, more professional. And also we've added a thing called rate of return, which tells you how the deal will perform over a 20-year period, which is very, very handy. So let's go here to analyze the deal. And I'm just going to say analyze a buy to let just for our purposes today. Okay, so you start here on the top left and you say add new deal. What I like is this little button here that says expand or compress. It just turns the analysis into a bigger page. Okay, so we can upload a property photo. I hope that I've still got it here. Yeah, there we go. It's just a little bit of a visual thing. If you are visual, you can put a description here. So I'm going to say student accommodation, Brixton. The address, okay, the address will just update the Google map here at the top. It's not so important. Okay, now if you remember the slide that I showed you, the 7 steps you need to take, these are the 7 that we're referring to. So area analysis, this is where we have to start. So this property is a house. It's got 11 bedrooms, 11 bathrooms. It's got 2 living rooms. It's got 4 carports. It's 450 or 480 square meters. Okay, so those are the details of the property. The asking price, they're asking 2.8 million. I did my analysis and found that properties are actually selling for about 2.4 in that area. So I'm going to go in with an offer of 2.3 million. The discount that I'm essentially fighting for is 17.86%, which sounds quite high, but honestly, the deals I'm looking at and a lot of other students and investors are looking at are 15 to 25% discounts. That's usually where you need to be playing, within the 15 to 25%. So that's the asking price. Then we come here to a section called monthly rental income. Very, very important. This is where we have to determine what it could rent for. Now, the estate agent told me that you could get 39,600, which is roughly 3,600 per room for the 11 rooms. So I'm going to use that as my rental figure. I will ask her for the rent roll, which is a proof, basically, that the rent that they're achieving is 39,600. Okay, you can click the next button here, or at the top, you can go to buying costs. buying costs. Remember, these are basically your bond and transfer costs. So we've put a link here. If you click this link, it'll open up another website called uber.co.za. And here you're able to determine what your total transfer costs would be. So if the purchase price is 2.3 million, let's say that we won't actually get a loan here because it's a multi-let student accommodation. So it'd have to be a cash deal. So the loan amount would be zero. Nature of status, is it a freehold property? Yes. Sectional is in a estate, so it's a freehold. The seller is not registered for VAT unless you're buying from a company, and you're going to buy either in your natural name, company, closed corporation, or trust. I'm going to buy in a company name, so calculate. And here it tells me that the transfer costs, remember there won't be bond registration costs because there's a zero loan amount. So it'll only be transfer costs of, let's call it 120. Okay, so I could put here 120. If you want to be more detailed, you can put, the 85,000 here in the transfer duties and then the transfer attorney costs because they've broken it down here. So you got the property transfer costs and then you've got the transfer duties. The duty is the cost to SARS, so that's a tax payment, and then the property transfer costs is actually transferring it into your name. So there we go. There's also some other buying costs. You might have a sourcing fee applicable to this deal if you're sourcing it out. You might have to move the tenants out or furnish the property or place the tenants. But we've put little tooltips here so that you can kind of get a sense of what these things might mean. Okay, so far the total costs are 120 for our buying. Refurb, right? So we've got here the long list. You can input all the different areas that you need, be it exterior or interior, or if you're a little bit less detailed, you can choose the short list option, which is more my preference anyway. The short list will open up basically one tab. And here I'm just going to call it modernization. We'll say it's an interior. I think the modernization will probably be about 40,000 Rand. I haven't viewed the property. I'm viewing it tomorrow. But based on the pictures that I've seen, it looks in relatively good condition. Okay, so that's the transfer cost. There's also an extra section here at the bottom for provisions. If you're going to get some professional fees, maybe you're going to get an architect to come and do some work, or labor costs or contingencies. I usually like to put a 20% contingency here. What it does is it takes your total refurb costs and adds 20% on top of it, so it becomes 48,000. That's just a contingency that I think is a good practice to get involved in because builders do tend to go over budget or over time. It's just the nature of the business. Other costs, so evictions, planning applications, zoning, etc. For this one, we will need to rezone it. It's currently zoned Res 1. If you want to do student accommodation, it needs to be zoned for commune status. I don't have the exact cost for this, but it's probably going to be around the 30,000 Rand mark. And I'll probably need to pay an architect to do the drawing. So what I'm going to do is go to refurb, and under professional fees, I'm going to put 20,000 Rand for the architect who's already given me a quote. So that's a guaranteed figure. Other costs, I think we find there. So the total buying cost, all your money in the deal so far is 222,000, which is your buying cost plus your renovations plus your other costs. Now we're going to go to the financing costs. All right. As you can see here, the bank financing, you can put a loan to value here of 90%, which means you're going to bond yourself for 2070 and your deposit will be 230. Remember, we're buying this property for 2.3 million. So if we put a zero loan to value, it means that this is a cash deal. There will be no bond. The deposit will be 2.3 million. Also, what's important to note, there's two things here. One is that banks don't necessarily loan very readily to multi-lets. And if they do, it would be based on a 30% deposit at a higher interest rate. So it wouldn't be very attractive. And number two, the bank only loans on the purchase price. So even if the property is valued at 10 million, but your offer of 2 million is accepted, the bank will make a loan on 2 million. So they'll give you, if your loan to value is 90%, they'll give you 90% of the 2 million. They won't loan on the value of the property, but rather on the purchase price. Okay, and then here's an angel financing section. So this is obviously a cash deal. Not everybody has 2 million. So here we're going to say investor, and let's say we're going to loan the purchase price from an investor. So we're going to loan the purchasing of a property from the investor, but we're going to fund our own buying, refurb, and other costs. Interest rate of, let's say, 10% over a 20-year period. Here you have the option to say, depending on the arrangement you make with the investor, to pay them monthly, the interest and the capital figure, which is how the banks work. You can also choose to pay monthly interest only. So you don't pay the capital amount back, right? This is a way in which you can reduce your cost. But remember, if you don't pay the capital amount back, the asset is never yours. It'll always be the investors. Or if you're doing a flip, you might want to go for end IC, which means at the end of the term of the project, you will pay the investor his loan amount back plus the interest. You pay it at the end of the project. With this deal, I'll probably go with a monthly interest and capital payment. So monthly, I'll need to be paying the investor 22,195 Rand for the loan of 2.3 million. Okay, so we've gone through all those steps. Now we need to go and work out, does the cash flow make financial sense? Step number 6. So the rental is 39,600. The expenses are 22,200. Levies on this property would be zero because it's a freestanding house, and levies are only applicable to estates, where there are shared services. The rates and taxes for this one is 1200. The building insurance, what I'm going to put here is 550, which includes Wi-Fi. So what I've done there is the Wi-Fi will be about 350 Rand, 300 odd Rand, and then some insurance on top of that. Void cost. Now, usually I would put an 18% for student accommodation because remember, students don't loan on November and December. But because we've got the 12-month lease agreements in place, I'm going to reduce it to 12%. I still want it to be at a 12% figure because if next year, for some reason, they don't want to sign 12-month contracts anymore, then these numbers are more accurate. Essentially, what this is doing is this is saying, what is 12% of your rental income? It's 4752. So what we're saying is add an expense item into your calculation for the voids so that when you do get to the months of November and December, you've already made a provision for them. So when you get the 36,009 or 39,600 into your account, put 4,700 away into a kitty every month, and then when you get to the months of November and December, you can use that kitty portion to still pay off your loan, your rates and taxes, etc. So that's why it's seen as an expense item. That's the void cost. Management fee, let's go with a 5%, which includes that. Maintenance provision, again, 5%. And then other, very important, is you'll need to pay for the water. It's got prepaid electricity most of the time, but you'll need to budget the water. I like to go with about 350 to 400 Rand per student. So if we go 350 times 11, let's just say it's going to be 3,600 roughly. So here we go. The monthly cash flow is positively coming in at 3,045 Rand. So income minus all expenses, it's telling us that the cash flow we should get at the end of the month every month is 3,000. Remember, we've got a provision here for maintenance and a provision for voids. So we're technically, if we made this 0 and 0, this is the actual cash flow that we're going to make. We're actually going to make 10,000 Rand on this, but we're going to put some aside for the vacancy period, and we're going to put some aside for potentially having to maintain the property at a later stage. So 12% and 5%. So I hope that makes sense. Your real cash flow is 3,000. Now, is this a good deal? That's where we come to the summary tab. Summary tab here on the left hand side has got all the high level numbers that you need to know, asking price, offer price, etc. And then here it tells us our return on investment is 16.46%. So that is, in our terms, a very good number. The way this is worked out is you need to take your net rental income, your net annual rental income, which is the 3,000 cash flow that we get every month, times 12. That's your net annual rental income, divided by your capital invested. Remember, we're getting 2.3 million loan from the investor, so the investor's paying this for us. But we still have these costs, being your buying costs, your renovation costs, your other costs, etc. So that money is money you need to put down. The rest is being loaned by the investor. So the way you work out your return is this number, 36,546, divided by 2,200, and you're left with a 16.46% return on the money you invested. Now, what's quite handy about the phase 2 of the app is you can see here there's a tab called ROR. So the ROR is the rate of return, and it tells you how an investment will do over a period of time. Essentially, what we're saying here is that as time goes on, will this deal still make sense, assuming there's a certain rental escalation as well as an expense escalation? Rental escalation means that rent people pay more rent every year. Usually, if you're in the right area, because there's such a demand for rentals in areas like Brixton and student accommodation, I could quite comfortably put an 8% increase. Sorry, that's expense increase. Let's go 8% here. So I could say that the yearly increase in rentals will probably go 8% because of the demand in the area. Your yearly expense increase will be roughly 6.5 in combination with inflation. So rates and taxes will probably go up by 6.5. Your insurance will probably go up by 6.5. So everything will become more expensive, but your rent will also go up. Discount rate is the rate at which money depreciates over time. So although you might have 100,000 Rand today, that 100,000 Rand won't have the same purchasing power in 10 years' time. So it's important to put there. I usually put 10%. And it depends what kind of investor you are. And then capital appreciation, this is telling us, will the property appreciate in value over time? In that area, it'll probably also go up quite a bit. So you put those numbers in. Those numbers can be determined from from TPN if you needed to use a tool to get those numbers. And then you click calculate. And essentially, it takes a couple of seconds to do some clever maths. And then it should come up with a projection over 20 years. So there we go. So essentially, it's just telling you what your return on investment would be over a 20-year period. Remember, this is a per year return. Obviously, it's taking into account the capital you initially invested. So yeah, looks like a relatively good deal. And then here it's telling you the income, expenses, and cash flow over 20 years. So in year one, there's a small cash flow, but then you can see the blue bar starts to grow and the red bar starts to decline. Because we have a 20-year loan with the investor, that's why the red hasn't moved. If I actually go back to finance costs here, and I'm going to choose rather I'll reduce this, I'll make it 8% over 15 years, then what you'll see with your rate of return, if we recalculate it, okay, calculate, doesn't seem to be speeding up. Let me save this quickly. Sorry guys, I know I'm playing around a little bit here. But what I've just done there is I wanted to show you that once you've paid off a portion of your loan, it'll give you a better return. So if we go back here to summary, rate of return, and calculate. Here we go. So essentially what I wanted to show you is that if your loan period with the investor was less than 20 years, you can see the app tells you that the red bar, which is your expenses, is steady. And then after the 15th year, once you've paid off your loan, you can see your expenses go in half. So essentially it's just telling you how the deal will do over a long period of time, assuming there's a rental escalation as well as an increase in expenses. Okay, so there we go. We've analyzed the deal. It does make financial sense. The next step would be to go to generate investor proposal. So generate investor proposal essentially pulls some information, as you can see. You can go here to proposal headings. And here you can edit or input the headings you want in the document. So currently we have 4 headings for you. You can have a deal introduction, how to source, condition, or exit strategy. So maybe for now, you just want to add deal introduction. And here you can type, that it's a student let, 40K rental, 12-month lease, whatever it is that you think an investor would want to see. You need to put in there. The introduction, financing requirements. So this requires a cash injection, 2.3 million at 15 years, 8% interest rate. Something like that. You can also put some contact details. So I'll just quickly populate this. Right, you can choose to show the scenarios. You can choose a color, blue, green, red, depending on the theme of your website. Amenities. So here you can choose how far an airport is or police station, whatever it may be. You can input those fields. The pictures. Right, so pictures. There's interior and exterior. If we go to exterior and we say add first. Let's see, I've only got 2 exterior photos, but what we've allowed is for bulk uploads. So you can now select how many photos you want up. So I will upload selected files. Just give it some time to complete the process. Close. think I did take very big pictures. I hope it's not going to take too long. Okay, there we go. So the two pictures are added there, and interior. Again, you can choose some bulk files. I'm just going to choose these two for now. Upload. I'm just giving it some time to finish the upload and then go close. Again, I've put some big pictures on there, so I hope it doesn't slow it down too much. There we go. Okay, so the pictures are there, and then you can go to the checklist as well. Okay, so your choices now is to save this, generate a simplified proposal or a detailed proposal. So I'm going to generate a simplified proposal as well as a detailed proposal. Okay, and I'm going to allow, you can see here at the bottom left, the short proposal is now starting to download. And the long proposal or the more detailed proposal is now also starting to generate itself. And there it is, it's starting to create. So let's have a look at the short proposal quickly. The short proposal, here usually your logo goes here. I haven't uploaded the logo just yet. Essentially, it's got the, as we said, the introduction to the deal, student let, 40,000 Rand rent. So just taking the information you've said. It's got you the high level property values, the asking price, offer, discount, return on investment, gross yield, and net yield. It's also taken my profile picture and created a personal introduction section. And then here, the numbers that an investor would be looking at, right? So what are the buying costs, the refurbs, the other costs, and the finance costs, all very much high level. There's no detail here. And then it shows you the monthly cash flow, the income, expenses, and thus the cash flow with the return. So pretty simple, clean, it doesn't take too long to do. And then the long proposal. Let's have a look at how the long proposal came out. So the long proposal has got a similar sort of style. Again, the deal introduction, the high level property values. You can see everything's in blue because we chose a blue color scheme. Personal introductions, got the features, amenities. I didn't put any down, so there won't be any there. The pictures also shown, so exterior and interior. Could show them what it looks like. And then the cash flow. So here's the numbers, rental 39. It tells you the void, the bond, the angel financing, the insurance, rates and taxes, management, maintenance, all the expenses, telling you that at the end of all expenses, this will be the cash flow of the deal. Then because it's the detailed proposal, it also shows you what the buying costs are, the refurbishments, how they've been broken down. Also tells you the financing costs as well as the scenario. So remember, the scenarios portion tells you that if things had to change, how would it affect my deal? For instance, if we look here at the rental income, if we get the rental income we expect, the return on investment is 22.49%. If the rental income is 10% less than we expected, our return would become 1.35. If our rental is 20% less than we expected, we start to lose money. We have a negative return on investment. So that is where, if you're working with a skeptical or a risk-averse investor, you might draw his attention here and say, "Look, the risk in this deal is if the rent is not the level we expect." You can see also the revised purchase price, right? If we buy the property for 10% more than we were expecting, we're going to lose quite a lot of money. So that's the way in which you can, kind of see where the risk of the deal is. And then right at the bottom, you've got the rate of return. So telling you what the return on investment would be over year 1, 5, 10, 15, and then income, expenses, cash flow. So that kind of, visually shows how the deal will do over a long period of time, and then ending with the contact details. So that is, and we're on 7 o'clock. So we were able to analyze a student deal in 30 minutes or less and generate 2 investor proposals. So I guess we did what we said we were going to do.